information on the course here. So, okay, we're officially live. Let me actually put this in the comments too. Okay. Okay. So, what am I drinking? This is just water. I had like a greens powder in it, so it's still a little bit green, but it's just water. So good question. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm really happy to be back here today. Excited to be here on YouTube as well. It's been fun doing these kind of like dual lives at the same time. I think on YouTube there's a way you could post pictures now, so I might have to get into that. But if you're on Instagram and you're watching and you haven't subscribed to YouTube, please do. We're trying to kind of grow on both channels here. Now, a little housekeeping before we get into the lymphatic system here. If you haven't checked out my new ebook yet, Nature's Kitchen and Cabinet, it has information on over 150 different superfoods, herbs, things that I use in practice, and things that I share about. So if you're looking for a beginner's guide to get into that, that's really helpful. I also give my tips. As you guys know, I love cooking. So I go over kind of my mental headspace, kind of like where I'm at when I'm going to make a meal. So, obviously I'm, 100% plant-based, but you can still use that outline when you're putting together a meal to get a more kind of holistic, approach when doing it. So that's really useful information. There's also tips on how to, how to build your own goals, how to reach your own goals. And then also there's some information on getting kids to eat healthy foods. So I hope you guys all find that stuff useful. Again, if you want to check out my book, Nature's Kitchen and Cabinet, that's going to be really exciting. That's linked in my bio on Instagram. That's linked on YouTube. One last thing, because I know I've gotten a lot of questions on it, is my detox course. So that is going to be coming out in February. That's my plan. I'm almost done putting the PowerPoints together, and boy, it is dense. I'm looking at a document right here on my left that is 183 pages. So this is not going to be some cookie cutter, okay, do this day one, do this day two. No, what you get is empowerment. You're going to get all the information. You're going to get all the different variations, and you're going to come up with the one that works for you. So it's not like a cookie cutter approach as far as, okay, this is what you do week one. This is what you do week two. This is what you do week three. I give you guidelines for weeks, and it's going to be 8 weeks. But what's really important, and why I think this is going to be better than any course that I've seen across any platform so far, is because it's going to go into the why. So kind of as I'm looking through this document, like, not only are we going to talk about what to eat, what to go through, we're also going to be talking about what is the root cause of all disease, what is the healing crisis, how do we go through it. There's going to be a reference guide into essential oils. So some of my favorite ones and where I get them, that's going to be part of it. There's going to be other tools like meditation and deep breathing, my adrenal cocktail recipe, healthy bowel management. That's really important. So if you're not pooping before you go into the later stages of this, that's a real issue. And I give you a ton of different options as far as it goes to getting the bowels moving. That does not include enemas. So I am generally not a huge fan of enemas. I think if you stay on them too long, they become addictive in their own way. So, and there's going to be a ton of different options. It's more about I'm giving you everything. You pick the stuff that works for you and go with it through 8 weeks. So that's essentially how it's going to be. There's no cookie cutter. I mean, I have some herbal formulas that I recommend. But even then, like, there's 6 primary and then there's more. You don't need to get any of them, or you can get one from every single one of them. So we have antimicrobials, we have general support, cleansers, detoxification support, probiotics, gut repair, omega-3s. We have binders, herbal laxatives, which again, I don't recommend for most people, unless you're really having trouble to go to the bathroom. Vitamin C, energy boosters. Like, there's tons, and that's just different herbal formulas that you're going to be able to pick from. So this is not cookie cutter. This is the one. If you've bought 3 of these before and you're frustrated, all the answers are going to be here. And that's not even talking about how we're going to be going into digestion. We're going to be going into hormones. We're going to be going into what else are we going into in this? Sleep and understanding digestion and understanding your immune system, stress management. Like this is all going to be in there. I digress. I've been going on for 5 minutes. I apologize. Let's get into the lymphatic system because that's why you're here. Now, if you saw earlier today, I did a post on Instagram talking about some of my favorite lymphatic herbs. I think there's a lot. One of the things that frustrates me a little bit, at least that I see on social media, is a lot of folks talking about things like rebounders, and rebounders are cool. They maybe serve a purpose, especially for folks who are maybe coming off an injury or are having a lot of trouble kind of getting back into an exercise routine, but I really do not necessarily like them for long term, like exercise in general, because I do think there's other things that you can do that are going to be, more helpful with this. And let's kind of get it, and I'll kind of get into why kind of as we go here. So, it's important to understand that like your immune system and your lymphatic system, they work together. So it's tough to like take one or the other kind of apart. Now we're going to talk specifically about the lymphatic system today, so I'm not going to go into too much about all the different white blood cells and lymphocytes and all that. We're not going to do too much of that today because we want to keep this to the lymphatic system and then talk a little bit more about the herbs. So, it's really our first and last line of defense. Now, in the lymph nodes, it does contain all these different white blood cells. So if you've gotten, say, a blood report, um, or like a CBC with the differential, you're going to see neutrophils and lymphocytes and monocytes and eosinophils and basophils. These are all found in lymphatic tissue because they help. They're kind of monitors, right? Now, a lot of this stuff is actually found around the gut lining, but there's also lymphatic drainage around that too. So really important. If I had to distill it down into like one sentence in terms of like what is the lymphatic system, we would call it the waste system. It's your septic system, your septic tank. Well, not just the septic tank, the entire septic system. It's how we get waste from the bloodstream into the blood supply so it could be filtered through the kidneys, filtered through the liver, so that it can be excreted via urine, via sweat, via poop, or breath. So every time we breathe, and this is why breathing is so important, and I talk about breath work, and I made the course literally for this, it is a way to detoxify. So getting that breath work in, having proper contraction of the diaphragm, diaphragmatic contraction downward, expanding the lungs, optimizing oxygen carbon dioxide transfer, really important. So if you look at this like another way, cells, they eat things, they consume things, and excrete things like we do. It's just at a microscopic level, right? So blood, if we think of it, that carries nutrition, energy to the cells. The lymphatic system essentially takes the byproducts from the cells making energy using this nutrition, and then gets rid of what's needed via the lymphatic system, gets rid of the waste products. Now, the lymphatic system has a few different components. There's the lymphatic fluid, there's lymphatic vessels, there's lymph nodes, there's the spleen, and there's the thymus gland. So we have a few different players that we're going to talk about here. And we'll kind of go through them stepwise in terms of level up. So we'll start with the fluid. So lymph fluid, you might hear it sometimes called plasma. It is more that we have more lymphatic fluid than blood in the body, which you may not know. It's a translucent, it's a clear fluid that flows from cells to the venous blood supply using the lymphatic vessels. So, in other words, it's this fluid that comes through lymphatic vessels and eventually dumps into the venous blood supply to then go to the heart and get cycled to the liver. Now, the lymphatic fluid, it's basically the medium that carries the septic waste. In other words, it's the equivalent of toilet bowl water, right? You go to the bathroom, you flush that water. That water is essentially equivalent to what in the body we call lymphatic fluid. Now, there's a lot of different things that can be in here. There could be some unused proteins. There could be different salts or ions in there, different gases, toxic metabolic waste products can be in there. There could be glucose. There could be hormones, steroid hormones, different enzymes, unused nutrients, and especially this is another reason why I love using herbal formulas versus other nutrients, because if you have artificial vitamins, say like folic acid, this can end up in the lymphatic system because the body just doesn't know what to do with the processed or synthetic types of certain vitamins. Different fungi, different molds, viruses, yeast, bacteria, parasites, etc. They can be found in the lymphatic system. So keeping it clean, keeping them moving is really important. Different chemical toxins, medications, byproducts of medication metabolism can be found here. Minerals, again, in their unusable form. Again, if they're poor quality supplements or something from the environment, they can be found there. Different types of immune cells, like we just talked about. And then fat from the small intestine and liver can actually be absorbed and through small lymph vessels called lacteals. So that's something that can be in here too. Now, like I was mentioning before, and this is going to, like we were talking about the rebounder, unlike the circulatory system, which has a heart, right? That's the pump that pumps blood, from the heart to all the extremities, to all the different organs in our body. The lymphatic system doesn't have one of those. Now, there's three different ways lymph flows in the body, three major ones. And it's through pressure changes in the blood vascular system. So, in other words, blood pressure changes can change how fast or slow lymph is flowing through the blood vessels. So that's really important to understand. That's one step apart. The second is contraction of your skeletal muscles. So this is any movement and exercise, and this is the part that confuses me um, with rebounders. Is like, sure, rebounders are one type of exercise, and they can help. There is muscular contraction, but the truth is, any muscular contraction is going to help move lymphatic fluid from or through the lymphatic vessels to where they have to go into the axilla, where they're dumped into the venous blood supply. So it doesn't have to be that. A jump rope is just as good. Running is just as good. Strength training is great. Something that's going to move all of your joints, all of your different muscles, that's going to cause those muscles to contract, which is going to push lymphatic fluid through. What also does actually is smooth muscle stimulation. So if the smooth muscle contracts and relax, that can also push lymphatic fluid through. And yes, I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this on Instagram. I'm also going to save this obviously on YouTube. And just one more time, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please do. I'm going to be posting more stuff there as well. So that's kind of another thing. So we have smooth muscle contraction, skeletal muscle contraction, and changes in blood pressure. Those are the three main ways lymphatic fluid is going to move through your body, right? Okay. Now, where this becomes an issue sometimes is obviously not moving. So no exercise or a very sedentary lifestyle is not going to be great. But other things that can do it is if you're consuming, say, high amounts of protein, high protein foods, especially a lot of animal products, different mucus forming foods, acidic foods, milk, processed sugars, candies, processed foods in general, these are going to cause some congestion in the lymphatic vessels. And if we're continuing to have a lot of different mucus forming acidic type foods, this is going to cause congestion. So even if you are exercising and moving every day, if we're constantly going back to the body with more congesting foods, acidic forming foods, this is going to cause a bigger issue. So you have to remember, like, keeping it clean, using a lot of different raw fruits and vegetables, and they could be simpler meals too. Like, some days this week I've just had like some fruit for lunch, and that's been great. So, and that helps because that's going to help cleanse. There's a lot of different astringent properties which help with um, contraction of smooth muscles, and again, that could affect blood pressure, which is going to affect lymphatic flow. But if you have all this, this is going to create not only congestion in the lymphatic fluid, it also creates a higher need for different types of white blood cells in the lymphatic fluid and can again lead to inflammation and then stagnation. So it becomes sluggish because there is more inflammation in those vessels. Hope that makes sense. So that's one part. Now, lymphatic vessels themselves, so they run parallel to veins and arteries. So you have uh, arteries flowing one way, veins flowing the opposite way, and lymphatic vessels flowing in line, essentially with mostly veins because they're growing essentially towards the heart, although they're going to the armpits where they dump into the venous supply. But generally, they're going in that direction. Now, lymph and blood capillaries extend almost into all the interstitial areas of the cells, with the exception of the skin or the top layer of the skin. We have different types of the central nervous system and bone marrow. So that's where you won't find lymphatic uh, tissue. So, or lymphatic tissue. It's going to be in all the other interstitial tissue, just not in the central nervous system, not in the obviously the top of the skin. We don't have it, which is your epidermis, and then your bone marrow. So when blood plasma leaves the capillaries, oh, and really quick, if you want, I can answer a couple questions on Instagram later. So if you put them in the question box, I'll get to them at the end. Okay. So let me get back to this. So if you put them in the question box, I'll get to them before I sign off that if you're interested. And I could also on YouTube too. So if there's comments, if there's questions, I can answer them kind of after I finish up here. Okay. So where was I? So yeah, so when blood plasma leaves the blood capillaries and the blood goes into the tissues, it nourishes the cells. The cells create, they go through their metabolic processes and they excrete their own waste products. These waste products are then collected into capillaries, and then these lymph capillaries, man, that's a tongue twister, flow into lymph vessels and then to lymph nodes, and that's where they filter into the organs, like the spleen, like the liver, appendix, tonsils, where this stuff gets cycled through. The thoracic duct, for example, this has lymph. This was where the lymph nodes from the lower extremities and the abdomen they kind of join up, and then go to the upper extremities to kind of go through to the subclavian region, which is essentially under your collarbones, where it again goes into the blood supply. Now, it's broken up kind of if you break the body up into three-fourths, this is essentially how, or fourths, this is how they dump. So if I cut straight down the middle into like the right of my chest here, this quarter, this sort of right upper quadrant, it is going to dump into the right axillary region. The other three, so both legs, both the abdomen, the left side of my head, dumps into the left side and then of the blood supply, and then that's where they both come together and then again cycle to those different organs to cleanse, whether it's the liver, spleen, etc. Now, these lymph nodes then are where you're going to find macrophages. Now, macrophages are a different type of white blood cell, and the main regions you're going to find these, like I mentioned, the thoracic lymph node, but there's also the axilla, armpits, the groin, which you'll call the inguinal, the mesentery, which are in the GI tract. It's almost like a webbing. And then there's cervical lymph nodes, which you sometimes might feel swollen kind of in your neck. You also might find here different types of B cells, B lymphocytes, and you can also find things like neutrophils, like plasma cells, different types of antigens. Again, those would be the toxins, and sometimes antibodies. Now, again, the main groupings that you're going to find here, again, neck, upper shoulder, chest. You're going to have the axilla, which filters the chest area, the upper extremities as well. You're also going to have in the groin region, like I mentioned, and then the mesentery. So when the lymph system is overburdened, when there's too many different toxins, it could be parasites, it could be molds, fungi, yeast, etc., different microbes. If there's damaged cells, so if there's breakdowns of these cells, it's going to lead to swollen lymph nodes. So you might feel that. That's when you might feel some swollen lymph nodes, maybe sometimes in the side of your neck, especially if you feel like you're coming down with something. I appreciate the badge, by the way. Thank you. Faith and tea tree all day. One of my favorite oils. Um, so, and again, different things can do this. Tonsils. I get questions about tonsils almost every time I do a DM or I do a Q&A on Instagram. What do I do for swollen lymph nodes or swollen tonsils? Um, it's almost always an immune system issue underlying. So you have to treat the entire immune system, the lymphatic system. And again, we're going to talk about some of the herbs that can support that on the back end, but it's also eliminating a lot of the inflammatory foods we talked about before. The dairy, the refined sugars, excessive, especially animal protein, that's going to cause a lot of congestion because those proteins are harder to break down. And we are going to be talking about this a lot more in the course, is going to cause some issues. Now, this becomes an issue because sometimes you'll have doctors who are quick to, get their remove tonsils from children, right? The problem is, like, if you remove the tonsils, it's going to cause a burden on the rest of the lymphatic system. So it's just the lymphatic or part of the lymphatic system, and when you remove it, that's only going to shift it to somewhere else. Um, so it doesn't. The real question is, why is it inflamed in the first place? Now, and if you do get it removed, you'll see sometimes these folks have issues with, immune system function in the future. It could lead to cervical spine deterioration. It could lead to pressure buildup in the head, whether it's the brain or the ears, sometimes behind the eyes or behind the eyes. It could really lead to that. But if you remove the tissue or use something with drugs or use drugs like antibiotics, it's not necessarily going to fix. It's just going to add to the burden. And this is why, again, cleansing with different herbs, using a lot of different, again, in my opinion, a lot more different like raw fruits and vegetables at least once a day, a big salad or, lots of fruits. These are going to bring a lot of those minerals and cleansing properties to um, the body. Now, the spleen, we have to talk about the spleen and the thymus gland a little bit too, because they're intricate parts of the lymphatic system as well. Now, the spleen is actually your largest lymphatic organ, tissue, whatever you want to call it, in the body. If you don't know, it's about a fist size or the size of a fist, and it's on the upper left side of the abdomen. So it's kind of like sits behind the stomach. It's almost like pushed up, almost like back in the corner, against the ribs, like just it's almost like up against the ribs on the same side or on the left side, I should say. Um, Now, it has a few different functions. It includes creating some different white blood cells. It includes destroying any bacteria and if there's any cellular debris. It includes recycling old blood cells. So this is actually how, again, bilirubin, which you'll find, which creates, which is needed for bile production in the liver, and then needed to excrete. So that's actually where that pigment comes from. It comes from broken down red blood cells. So during a hemorrhage, for example, the spleen can release different blood stores to prevent shock. So if you're bleeding somewhere, that's the spleen almost has an extra reserve of blood for when you need it in those situations. The thymus, on the other hand, it's located kind of in the middle of the sternum. Um, it's actually just in front of and above your heart. So that's actually where it's located. It's really important actually because if you ever heard of T cells, that's what the T stands for. They're thymus cells. They come from the thymus gland. Thymic lymphoid cells is the scientific name because they come from the thymus gland. That's where you get T cells from. Um, you know, it's really important that you use this, that you have these two, because T cells and B cells are actually what uh, give you your cell mediated immunity. In other words, it's not controlled by antibodies. Now, when you hear about a lot of different injections, those basically go for a different part of the immune system, and that is called your essentially antibody immune system. It's not cell mediated. So, in other words, it's based on, or the concept is, it goes based on memory. However, your cell-mediated immunity is the thing that deals with a lot of different molds, yeast, fungi, bacteria, etc. And a lot of folks, actually, the thymus could potentially kind of whittle away or shrink in size as we age. And because of the beatings a lot of us give to our own bodies, it can actually shrink over time. So keeping a strong lymphatic system, enhancing and supporting that immune system function is going to keep your thymus strong. And this is especially important in a world where, again, the strong are more likely to survive. So those are kind of the big organs in terms of like how it flows. And again, just big picture, our lymphatic system, it essentially runs in line with our circulatory system. It's made up of vessels that turn into nodes that dump into the blood supply, so then that can be cleansed or filtered really through the spleen, through the liver, and then we can get rid of any sort of toxic waste we need via, again, stool, urine, breath, sweat. Those are four elimination pathways. So that's where it comes in. It's incredibly underrated, and I hope that makes sense. Now I'm going to go over some of the herbs that I talked about earlier today that can support it. But remember, um, movement, there is no substitute for movement. You cannot have, in my opinion, an optimal functioning lymphatic system if you are not moving daily. Now, I talked about rebounders. Again, that's one way to move. Ideally, something that you're going to be moving all of your joints a little bit every day. This is partially why walking is so important, because that's going to move every single bone in your body at some point, kind of throughout your going. So that's one way. Another is, again, we could have some herbal stuff that could support it. Many of these are also going to be enhancing for the immune system, and as we've talked about, they're kind of inseparable. They kind of work together. So cleavers is the first one. Now they have many different properties, including alterative, which means they kind of help um, alter your homeostasis in a positive way. They're anti-inflammatory. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Are we back? Oh, see, this is what happens. You get phone calls. I should just turn this on. Okay. I think we're good. Think we're good. Okay. Yeah, this is why I have to turn it on do not disturb before I get started. So I hope that's all good there. But cleavers are especially known for cleansing the lymphatic system. So they're thought in terms of mechanism. What they can do is they can like dissolve and clear up any sort of lymphatic congestion. I'm guess that what we know is because they can help. Can't hear. Okay. Sorry. Give me a second. So I'm going to post this and then come back and start over. So sorry on YouTube. I'm going to close this and share. I'm going to do lymphatic system. Sorry. Part one, share. And then I'm going to do this again. So sorry on YouTube. Give me 1 second. I'm also do not disturb. Okay. Let's try that now. Again, a mistake, but we're back. I hope we're back. Sorry, give me 1 second and we'll get started. Sometimes this happens. What are you going to do? Okay. Okay. I'll just put questions in the Q and A box. Okay, so I did lose the question. So if you can, put them back in the question box. Okay, so cleavers. So what they're thought to do is they can help break up congestion in the lymphatic system. They're really useful for, again, if there's swollen lymph nodes, swollen congestion, it's really good for that. I think it also has they have a positive impact on the immune system, which again is linked to our gut very, very much so, which is why I think it's helpful with skin challenges like dermatitis or psoriasis. Reason being is because I think it has a positive impact on the gut. And Anything that's going to improve gut health, gut sustainability. Again, we're gonna talk about this in way more detail in the course. Um, is going to help skin. Now, echinacea is another one. This is one of my favorite herbs, and I think it's just one of the most popular herbs, and for really good reason. You guys might know it because it's really great for like viral or flu like symptoms. Really helpful, short term if you're getting that. It's something that is really useful. Antibacterial, antiseptic, antiviral, um, anti-inflammatory. It even has carminative properties, so it can help with gas sometimes. Echinacea is really known for supporting the immune system. Some people even call it the immune herb or the herb of immunity. It enhances tissue function of immune tissues, say like the blood, the bone marrow, the spleen, um, and the thymus gland. It also has strong antiseptic and antibiotic properties, which is again, I think, a reason why it's used so often in things like flu-like symptoms, so pneumonia, anything similar like that. Sometimes it could be helpful with arthritis, psoriatic rheumatoid arthritis, really helpful with that. Can also be really helpful though with UTIs, and different types of issues in the blood. So really, really helpful there. Um, Astragalus, one of my favorites. That's why we have it now in two products. If you want to get the Astraga honey or you get the jalapeno astragalus hot sauce, um, astragalus, one of my favorite herbs. It's one of the best tonifying herbs. If you go into um, Chinese medicine, they'll call it a tonifier. We call it more of an adaptogen, really, in more Western, I guess you would call it, um, herbalism. Uh, but it's one of my favorites. It's really great for the endocrine system, so your hormones. That's why it gets its adaptogenic properties, but it also strengthens the bone marrow and the spleen, which again we talked about are really important for the immune system because that's where a lot of different immune cells are made. So really, really important there. Um, it helps increase energy going to cells, which is really important, especially in the spleen, like we talked about, but also the GI tract. So it can be really, really helpful there. It also can help actually some folks with excessive sweating. So it does have that property. It's one of the most powerful immune system builders. So it's, in my opinion, I think one of the best herbs for long term use. It's much better, I find, to take as a preventative than a curative, if that makes any sense. So it's not something that I would rely on all the time, although it can be found in a lot of different formulas that can be helpful for, say, like flu, viral, lymphatic congestion. It's one of those things that are really great for um, like support day to day, and that's where where it I think really shines. It helps again increase immune system function. It also can improve energy levels, and is really helpful with that. So astragalus is something that I think is also really good for immune system and then lymphatic flow. Golden seal, probably one of my favorite um, herbs in general. So it's funny, like it became so popular. I don't know if you guys know this in North America during the 19th century that nowadays it's actually over farmed because it is that powerful. Now, golden seal is probably on a short list of herbs that would be herbs that I would not take daily indefinitely. Definitely one of the more the stronger anti microbial herbs. Really, really helpful when it comes to balancing blood sugar. And it does that, I think, because it's really useful when it comes to fungal yeast type stuff. Those usually come about usually with a history of things like antibiotic use or insulin resistance type presentations. In other words, so poor diet, a lot of dairy, stuff like that. It can help with that, along with some of the lifestyle stuff. So one of my favorites, also again really helpful again for the immune system because it really helps, in my opinion, with different types of gut issues. And again, 80% of our immune system is located in the gut or right around the gut. So it can help kind of balance some of that. Really great for GI issues, respiratory issues. It also increases gastric juices, so stomach juices, and digestive enzymes. So it can be really helpful for digestion too. Again, just one of those herbs that I tend to go to again and again. It's one of my favorites. It's just not one of those that I would use all the time. It's definitely one that I'm going to talk about as an option in the detox course. Red clovers, similar to cleavers, you usually don't find them on their own. So they're usually like an additive to different types of herbal formulas. But red clovers, like cleavers, are known as lymph and blood purifiers. So they keep the blood clean, they keep it slippery, so it's moving and it's not coagulating, it's not getting stuck together. So really helpful for that. Red clover is also really great for different types of skin conditions, and it's usually used with other herbs, like one we're going to talk about, which is burdock root. So you'll find red clover in a lot of different herbal formulations with burdock root because they seem to have synergistic effects. Really helpful again for cleansing the blood and really helpful for the liver too. So part of what the liver does is help detoxify. It helps cleanse the body of toxins and circulate through them. So really, really helpful there. Red clover is also really helpful for maintaining the integrity of red blood cells. So it's really, really helpful for that too. Um, Red clover also has actually really helpful. So one of the things with herbs I think people get stuck up on, or actually, I got a question about this, is phytoestrogens. Now, red clover has phytoestrogenic activity. But you have to remember, phytoestrogens does not necessarily mean that they have the action of estrogens. It just means they have compounds that look like estrogens that can increase estrogen activity, or it could decrease estrogen activity. So this was like always a question with soy, for example, because it has phytoestrogens. That's always the big thing. But if you notice, like if you look at organic soy, not none of the GMO, conventional garbage, because that's what exactly what that is. It's garbage. It You don't get the xenoestrogenic effects there. And that's kind of the important part that we have to understand. So it actually helps. So red clover can be really helpful, again, probably due to some of the liver enhancing properties. It can help relieve some menopausal symptoms because part of what the liver does is help filter hormones. So really important there. Okay. A couple more I want to go through here. So dandelion, one of my favorites. Again, another huge one for liver support, but also for kidneys and lymph. So when I think of like fluid support, dandelion's probably one of the first ones that I like the most. So blood, lymphatic cleanse, liver support. That's dandelion, which is kind of crazy because so many of us have dandelion growing in like literally our front yards. Dandelion greens, again, super bitter, so really helpful for digestion too. So they're fantastic for that. Again, really great for purifying the blood. They help as a diuretic, or they help enhance the immune system, enhance liver function. Really, really, really helpful. So like, yes, it's helpful for things like hepatitis or jaundice, cirrhosis. It can also help increase pancreatic function. Again, really helpful as a cleanser. So it's helpful for the kidneys too. Bladder, really good for that. Um, it's so really, really helpful. Dandelion is also, it's loaded with different, nutrients that we know of. So things like vitamins A and C, like iron, magnesium, calcium. Really, really helpful. One of my favorite herbs, again, for the lymphatic system. Dandelion tea, yeah, fantastic. And again, it's just something I think that almost everyone has pretty easy access to. Burdock is another really great one for lymphatic system and just general detoxification. So obviously the lymphatic system's part of that because you're trying to get rid of or get toxins to our detoxification organs or different white blood cells to be handled appropriately. But burdock specifically is another one that's known to help with liver function, but also help improve bile secretion. It also seems to have some, which is also a reason, sorry, why it can help with different types of skin and other body ailments because it helps enhance those detoxification properties. Interestingly, burdock you can also use for Burns topically. So, like aloe, which is great for like any skin condition. Burdock is another one that you can actually use that's really, really good for that. Also, another one that's really helpful for improving kidney function and removing acid buildup. So, again, too many acidic mucus forming foods, these are going to, protein heavy rich foods, these can put a burden on the kidneys. This can help, again, along with some of the dietary changes we talked about, can really help with that. Grapeseed, another one of my favorite antimicrobial herbs, but another one that's really, really helpful for lymphatic cleansing. So, and there could be a lot of different properties to this. It could be the malic acid and tartaric acid. It could be different vitamins like A, C, different B vitamins. The anthocyanins are really, really good with that. They help reduce capillary permeability. So it increases the integrity of vessels. Really important for that. The grape leaves are really good. You might see great grapeseed extract, which is one of my favorites. These help normalize blood pressure and heart rate, which again, when we were talking about lymph flow, blood pressure is one of those things that can inhibit or add to blood flow. So having having proper pressure is going to affect our ability to move lymph through our body effectively. So really, really important there. Good afternoon to you as well. Finally, I got one last one to go through, and that's licorice. Now, licorice, I think, is underrated. Now, there's two different forms. You'll have your regular licorice, so to speak, and then you'll have your deglycerinated. I always mess up that word. Deglycerizate. DGL is what you'll see it as. It's one of those tongue twister ones I still haven't figured out. But DGL is more something the deglycerinated version is one that you will use for that you could use long term, and that's going to be more for gut healing. So with like slippery elm, with marshmallow, with aloe to help soothe and heal the gut lining, really, really helpful. Again, we're going to talk about that in the detox course. Um, but if you get the straight up licorice, that's actually a really good immune system tonic and adrenal tonic. So really good for the endocrine organs, the adrenal glands. Really, really helpful. So it can stimulate that flow. It's also something that can help regulate blood pressure. Really, really important for that, which again, we just talked about, can help move lymph through the body. So with regulated blood pressure, that's going to help push lymph through the blood vessels as well. So really important there. It also has, again, cleansing and detoxifying properties. It can also help balance blood sugar. So really, really helpful. Licorice is great. You can also use it topically in the oral cavity in the mouth to fix any sort of microbial imbalance and prevent tooth decay orally. So licorice, another one of my favorites. It's also adaptogenic. Um, yeah, it's awesome. So I got a couple questions. Good afternoon to you as well. I'm going to answer a couple here on Instagram before I go, so I'll leave this up. So let me, if you have any questions, by the way, on YouTube, put them in the chat and I'll try to get to them. So let's get to this first one. Okay. So, Leanne, are there any of these herbs that shouldn't be taken together? Let me look over my list again here. So, as far as like antimicrobials, so there's a couple of them I have on this list. It's golden seal and grapeseed. Sometimes you'll find them in combination. I will say antimicrobials are probably the ones the most that you would have to kind of be a little judicious about. Now, you can find blends. For example, biocidin is one of my favorites. You can find that on my store or on my full script account, which is a blend of a bunch of different antimicrobial herbs. It's really helpful. I've used it with a lot of people. It's a dropper, which is great for kids, and it actually tastes pretty good. So that's pretty useful. But generally speaking, if I'm using single antimicrobials, so like clove, garlic, oregano, golden seal, wormwood, black walnut, unless it's in a blend that you already know about, I would probably use one at a time. and I would cycle them. I would not take them for longer than like 1 or 2 months, then maybe take a break and then try another one. And again, I'm going to talk about this in the detox course. So, um, again, you'll learn more about each of the ones I like, but I'll keep that for wraps because I have all my favorites there that I use. Okay. Um, what would you give a 3-year-old who's sick, who just started preschool, who keeps getting sick? Well, one, I try to figure out what's going on with the kid. If he's sick all the time, then I would have questions on how the kid was, or what the birthing process was like. Was it a C-section? Was it a natural birth? I would then try to see if the child was breastfed or given different types of antibiotics, especially as a kid. That's going to affect that child's microbiome, especially if they're stuck inside. A lot of 2, 3 year olds, they're stuck inside, especially the last 2 to 3 years. They're not getting out in nature. They're not getting exposed to the different fungi and molds and yeast and stuff to train our immune system. So that does leave it a little bit deficient. Remember, like sometimes, a lot of times, symptoms are just reactions. They're cleansing reactions in a way. So you can use things like garlic, especially with kids. That's really helpful. Lemon's really helpful. Peppermint, that can help in the moment, but it's usually likely an underlying gut thing that I find the problem that you kind of have to address that can help strengthen the immune system and then become more regulated. So that's how I would do that. Okay, next. How do I get rid of dark floaters in the eye? There isn't like one way to do that. You kind of have to find out what's going on with the person. Um, the colors can tell you something. So as you know, like in iridology, like if they're brown in color, that usually indicates that there's some liver involvement. If they're orange colored, then that could be liver, but it also could be maybe gallbladder, or it could be blood sugar related. So it kind of depends. I would need more information, so can't really like answer that per se. Could we help a baby with jaundice by giving dandelion? Yeah, dandelion is fine for children. Citrus is really good too. Lemon, lime, orange, all stuff like that. Um, but jaundice in a young one, you'd really have to try into that. Again, some of those like essential oils diffused can be helpful too. Peppermint, lemon, all that can stimulate is really good and can be helpful too. So I would try some of those. And again, those are linked on my page. You could find those, the essential oils. Um, those can be helpful if they're diffused, especially in young kids. What is next? Hi, have you heard of lily of the valley herb? Really fleshed out family members, lymphatic. Have you heard of lily of the valley? Oh, that's an herb, lily of the valley. Okay. Um, I'm not too familiar with it. Okay. So, um, I'm not too familiar with it. Different types of glycosides. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with it. Unfortunately, I'd have to look into it. Favorite tea brands for blood cleansing post. I tend to prefer herbs. Um, or sorry, I would tend to prefer like herbal blends in like tablets or tincture form. That again, which is why I talk about the companies that I do again through my full script. But teas, I would always prefer, if you know a local herbalist who sources good stuff, I would try to give him or her the business. They would definitely be able to. They might be able to make custom blends for you as well. So that would be really good. I would look for a brand that is at least USDA organic. If you could get loose leaf, I would say even better. That's better than the tea bags. Because some of the tea bags do have things like microplastics and stuff like that, which are not ideal. So if you could get loose leaf teas from like a local shop, that would probably be your best bet. Um, Especially if their sourcing's good. I would try to support the local stores if I could, honestly. Or I would get, again, the tablets and tinctures that I talked about. Again, I generally like the companies like MediHerb. I like Biocidin, I think makes really good products. I like Metagenics, Designs for Health. There's a few others, but those are usually the ones that I tend to use the most. And again, I like Standard Process, which is MediHerb. I like the ones that are generally whole food based. Those are the ones that if you work with me, that's pretty much what you're going to get. Um, what else? What else? What else? Favorite teas we did. Best oil for psoriasis. So I talked a little bit about this yesterday. So I think um, lavender is really helpful, especially like topically. So you can use that. But again, like psoriasis or any other like internal issue like that, that's going to be a gut thing that you really have to get kind of checked out. So that's where I would start. That's where I would kind of go with it. Um, okay, a couple more. One more. Your take on essential oils, hearing a lot. Oh wait, I answered that one in my stories. So go check that out. All right. Thank you for hanging out. This has been a fun 51 minutes. I know we had a hiccup in between. But yes, please do support the YouTube channel. I'll be posting more stuff on it. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to be answering questions later too on IG. Again, if you want to support me, you could check out my ebook, Nature's Kitchen Cabinet. I have more information on all these herbs there. So you can check that out. The detox course is going to be coming again in February. That's what I'm working on this afternoon. So keep your eyes up for that. I will start posting more stuff about it kind of as we go. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. It's going to be dense. There's going to be a lot of information in it. I hope you're ready for it. Um, yeah. All right. I'll see you guys later. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll have another one of these chats next week. All right. Bye.